Good morning. Today I'm joined by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and our state attorney, Susie Lopez. About 3:47 this morning, our emergency call takers receive a phone call from the victim's ex-husband. The victim's ex-husband was conveying to us that his adult son, one of 3 adult children that live with their mother here at Lake Montauk Drive here in Gibsonton, advising their father that the new boyfriend who's lived with her about 3 months beat her up and lit the bedroom on fire. So the emergency call taker dispatches 2 deputies and county fire to the residence. They get here minutes later, make contact with the mother and one of the adult's sons. They've learned that the suspect who lit a fake plant and a few other miscellaneous items on fire had been extinguished already. And as they're making contact with the mother, our victim, they can see that she already has a contusion forming on the right side of her face. At this point, it's time to make contact with our suspect. While they're talking and conversing with the mom for about this 5-minute period, they can hear him upstairs. He's not happy. He's irate that we're even on scene and investigating this domestic violence situation. But at this point, it's time to make contact with our suspect. As they're walking up the stairs, a very tight quarters approaching the bedroom, they're calling out to him, Manuel Alvarez, Manuel, come out. And he's telling him to come on up. At one point, he says, come on up, I'm going to shoot your ass. So as they're approaching the bedroom, the first deputy approaches the bedroom. He opens the door. With his arm fully extended as he flings his door open all the way out in that firing position. The deputy, having a moment like, oh boy, this is really happening, tries to get some type of concealment behind a laundry room, and he fires several shots, striking our suspect twice in the upper torso area. I'm being told that our suspect is in critical condition. He's currently undergoing surgery at the Tampa General Hospital. Hold on one second. I'm getting moved. I'll be there. Our deputy, as you're going to find out, is very irate. Irate that this suspect made him deploy his firearm, and you hear him. He's even using profane language. You know, he is irate, but still continues to do his job. Absolutely textbook. When he sees the firearm, he yells out "gun," so his partner behind him knows that the suspect has a firearm. He immediately calls for county fire to come up and render first aid and transport him. Our suspect is Manuel Alvarez. He's 50 years of age. He's got no criminal history. There's no calls for service at this residence. Back in 2022, our suspect was Baker acted by the Tampa Police Department. Our deputy involved is Sean Swinford. He's 35 years of age. He was hired in July of 2024. He's been here 8 months. He's a prior law enforcement officer with 8 years experience, coming from the state of Indiana, then Longboat Key, before we were fortunate to have him here. As is standard practice, he's been placed on administrative leave with pay. At this point, as we continue an independent and full transparent investigation, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's here and will take over the entire investigation. And our state attorney, Susie Lopez, has been here since the early morning hours, as she always is. As we stand here on our early Sunday morning, here, our second domestic tragedy this week, I have a plea. My plea is to anyone out there who's a victim of domestic violence. There is another way of life. Regardless of the circumstances that you're in, that you think there's no other way of life, I promise you there is. We have a phenomenal resource in the spring of Tampa Bay, and it's as easy as having the fortitude to pick up the phone and call the Spring of Tampa Bay so you don't end up being a victim of this domestic violence. What questions can I try to answer now? Thank you for being patient.
No problem. Speaking from like last week, Wednesday, that situation, how, like, sort of almost the same in a sense, and with kids at the house when this happened. Like, the 12-year-old up in the closet, the kids were here, just the trauma that these kids are experiencing.
Domestic violence never just traumatizes the victim, the entire family is victimized. And here's another clear example. Yes, these 3 children are adult children, but it doesn't mean the trauma that they suffered. What they had to witness and hear here today is no different than the other day. And it's horrible that these abusers put their victims and the victims' families through this type of abuse. As of now, we know that the 3 adult children were not injured. We know that she has a contusion. They're still working through that now. So at this point, we know she was struck at least once in the facial area. With what? We don't know. We're working through that. This kind of transpired rather quickly, as you could imagine.
In all these situations, too, this guy didn't have a criminal history. The guy last week didn't have or this week didn't have a criminal history.
No.
What could she have done? Or, since there's no record that this guy was abusive or the other guy was with him.
Yeah, you know, the incident earlier this week, he kept telling her that he was going to come over there and take his own life and light himself on fire. I said it on Wednesday. I wish he would have tried to get an injunction. I'm a firm believer in the system. We could have went out and maybe had a conversation with him. I would have liked to believe that there would have been hope that we could have mitigated this and that violence wouldn't have transpired. Here, I don't know how it can be prevented. A lot of uses of force, a lot of homicides that we faced last year. You know, fortunate they aren't from robbery, they aren't from some drug deals, very minimal. A lot of it's family abuse, and that's why I'm sitting here employing with our community. If you believe that there's a propensity for violence or that you're a victim of violence, there's another way of life. Don't wait until it's too late, and then we end up having calls for service like this.
Oftentimes, when law enforcement gets involved, it's not the first time of domestic violence is occurring in the home.
Yeah, most of the time when we get involved, there's been a pattern of violence, and one of the children make the phone call. In this case, it was an ex-husband who made the phone call. Today, I'm grateful that someone made a call, so this violence ended today.
And just to clarify, Sheriff, the ex-husband never was here on property, correct?
Yes, the ex-husband got called by one of the 3 adult children who live here with their mother. He is the one who made the phone call to us. As he calling our emergency call center, he's on the line with one of the adult children getting more details about what transpired.
Any other questions?
The trauma, like you spoke Wednesday with deputies who respond to this, you had there's different advocates on site for them as well.
Yes, as you can imagine, this is traumatizing. No one ever comes to work saying, hey, I'm going to take someone's life today. He's visibly shook up, and he's not a young deputy. He's been a law enforcement officer for over 8 years. But regardless of how many years of service you have to rely on your training. But the emotional part of it, that's the part where we're going to need some help. The training kicked in, it was textbook, and he did what he needed to do to preserve that preservation of life. But now there'll be some work that he'll have to go through too. His work doesn't end today. He will certainly, victim advocate is on scene, and we'll get him some help. Again, he's visibly and physically shook up that he had to take a life today. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.